Hey, here are 5 stupid things I've noticed about MacGyver. MacGyver has an incredibly eventful past. One of the things that made MacGyver such a fun show was the way MacGyver's backstory was obviously invented as needed, with no thought whatsoever given to continuity or verisimilitude. If you collect all the little snippets of backstory revealed throughout the series, you wind up with a MacGyver who is somewhere from his mid to late 20s to mid to late 30s, his age seems to vary as necessary too, who is a former Olympic level ice hockey prospect, a former college physics whiz, a former race car driver, a Vietnam veteran, and a former oil well firefighter. And in the middle of all this, he also found time at some point to backpack across Europe with his buddy Jack Dalton and their friend Mike, who was a lady, and to volunteer extensively at his neighborhood Boys and Girls Club. All of this by the time we meet him at the start of the first season. MacGyver has enough ex-girlfriends to fill the Metrodome. Oh yeah, and while he was doing all that stuff I just mentioned, he was also spending the 70s getting enough pussy to finish a respectable 3rd behind Wilt Chamberlain and Gene Simmons. Check it out. There's Ellen, there's Amy, there's Lisa, there's Deborah, there's Karen, there's Kate, there's the identical twins, Carly and Roxy. And those are just the serious relationships. Even if you subtract the women who eventually tried to kill MacGyver, that's still a hell of a resume. MacGyver is apparently qualified for every conceivable job. In the first season, MacGyver's job was relatively straightforward. He was the guy that got sent in to rectify a sticky situation when there was no other option. He rescued hostages, he collected evidence, he did what was necessary to keep the Cold War from turning hot. He was Rambo without the bloodlust, James Bond without the alcoholism or panty-peeling accent. Not that he needed it. But as the show wore on and the writers rapidly ran out of shit for MacGyver to do, he also had stints as a science teacher, criminal investigator, hockey coach, weapons designer, nature guide, environmental activist, homeless person, and undercover lumberjack, to name but a few. Now, normally I would say that one man having the skills necessary for such a multitude of occupations strains credibility. But this is MacGyver we're talking about here, the man who once built a powered paraglider out of a fan and the side of a tent. The man who once defused a nuclear bomb with a tennis racket. The man who once cut through the lock of an armored car using a torch that he had made from a bicycle. So yeah, I think he's earned the benefit of the doubt. MacGyver demonstrates poor judgment in choosing friends. The episodes guest starring MacGyver's best friend Jack Dalton are some of the most fun of the series, but if you really stop and examine their friendship, you'll find that Jack is a bit of a user, and MacGyver is kind of a bitch. I mean, the plots of those shows all revolve around Jack getting in hot water when some get-rich-quick scheme of his goes awry, and then MacGyver has to come in and bail him out, sometimes reluctantly. And Jack's not even the only friend who uses MacGyver this way. Pete is always fussing like a titty baby, trying to get MacGyver to do stuff for him. Penny Parker seems to exist for the sole purpose of having MacGyver help her. Ditto for the gang down at the Challengers Club, all except for Breeze, of course, the greatest character in the history of television.
Chill out, woman.
You tell her, Breeze. Anyway, the point is, with friends like these always bleeding him dry, it seems like Mac would be better off just hanging out with his enemies. And speaking of whom, MacGyver! The only thing better on MacGyver than a Jack Dalton episode was a Murdoch episode. Murdoch was MacGyver's arch nemesis, his Skeletor, if you will. And like Skeletor, everybody always treated Murdoch as this dire threat whenever he showed up, even though, objectively, as an audience member, he never really seemed all that threatening. I mean, he was supposedly this world-class professional killer, but the only person we ever see Murdoch kill is himself, while simultaneously failing to kill MacGyver. I mean, that level of incompetence must be difficult to live with, but Murdoch doesn't do himself any favors by continually, exclusively focusing on MacGyver again and again, stacking one failure on top of another on top of another. I mean, at least take out a few easy marks in between to get your heat back, man. The hardest part is only picking 5. Take us out, Murdoch.
Say goodbye, MacGyver! MacGyver!
See you next time.